On today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, Montreal has swept the last four Cup champions on their road trip, but do they have larger prizes in their sights?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1217 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that ensures you won't miss an episode, and it helps us out a ton. And that's going to be really important because we're back to 5 a week for the next little while. We are through our holiday stretch, so you're going to have an episode of ours in your inbox Monday through Friday. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as @MaybeIt'sIan, and I am joined by Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. Laura, the Canadiens are homebound once again, coming off of one of their most improbable road trips in recent memory, probably in my life, if I can be honest. How are we feeling at the end of what felt like it was going to be a disaster that turned into maybe the largest turning point of the Canadiens' rebuild thus far?
I was going to say, it's been a while since we've seen a turning point like this in the season. And we do have to hope that it is a turning point and the Canadiens continue on this upward trajectory. They're not going to win every game between now and the end of the season. So I think as a whole, as a fan base, we need to be calm about the fact that sometimes they can lose to bad teams. They lost to Columbus and then beat Vegas. They lost to Chicago and then beat the Avs. We need to really, we need to stop acting like Vancouver Canucks fans circa 2012. We really need to do that. We need to keep a level head because we all agreed before the season started that In the Mix was quite ambitious. We didn't not believe Marty when he said that, but we were a bit skeptical, right? So it turns out Marty was right. And that's okay. And we can rejoice in that fact and we can enjoy these wins. But if there's a loss, doesn't matter how good or bad the team is, we cannot fall apart every time. We have to stop doing that.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the 2012 Vancouver Canucks fans. You could have just said the current players on the Vancouver Canucks, and that would have also applied given what's going on in British Columbia right now. We're going to get into that a little bit in this one because Montreal has Vancouver on Monday on the Amazon Prime Monday Night Hockey. We do have to talk about, obviously, the Canadiens games over the weekend, the road trip as a whole, and Elliot Friedman dropped a little bit of a bomb on Elias Pettersson and JT Miller by extension in Saturday headlines. So we want to talk about that and maybe if Montreal should be interested in Pettersson. But let's start over the weekend. We'll get to the Chicago game in the weekly recap because sort of a can of worms there. But with the Avalanche game, they gave up one goal to the Colorado Avalanche, and it was a power play goal. Jakub Dobeš has yet to give up a 5-on-5 goal in his NHL career.
He's doing really well. The
Canadiens as a whole, I thought, played some fantastic hockey against the Colorado Avalanche on Saturday night. A game that we all kind of thought was going to, not go their way, especially early. They, from the middle of the second period on, I can't believe I'm going to say this, the Montreal Canadiens were dominant against the Colorado Avalanche in that game. What are your big takeaways from Montreal, not only taking on the Avalanche, but like the big story right now is the last four Cup champs have been left in Montreal's wake on this road trip that seemed like would have been, 5 scheduled losses, and instead turns into, like we mentioned earlier, the biggest turning point of the season. What are your big takeaways from especially the Saturday game against Colorado?
I think this is the thing too, is that I was a little bit worried, obviously, Patrick Laine, and so I was quite worried, but what ended up happening is that the Montreal Canadiens seemed to have found a new gear, right? And we talked so much early in the season how their passing wasn't working, the defense wasn't working and all of that. And a lot of times, either our listeners would point out or we would point out that they have not played together. Like this iteration of the Montreal Canadiens, there were a lot of new guys on the roster. There were a lot of lineup changes just in terms of where Marty was putting everybody. And so it took them a while to gel. And it's true, too, that they didn't have their ideal lineup until recently. But both of those things came together at the right time. And what I am seeing, and what's really, really important, is that they don't look lost out there. There was a degree of lost expressions, or sometimes the body language. They look like they know what they're doing. And it's like, let's be honest, that's not how they looked early in the season. And to, to the Canadiens' credit, like, that's a normal thing, right? Like the Avs, if you look at their first few weeks, they also looked like they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
And then they brought it together like any good team can. So, which is not to say that I don't think the Montreal Canadiens right now are better than, Colorado Avalanche, a couple of years away removed from their Stanley Cup. What I'm saying is that they're growing in the correct direction, and they're finding that chemistry. And I think the more these players grow, the more they grow up, the more mature they become, the quicker that chemistry is going to find itself in future iterations of the Canadiens. Because we know there's a lot of guys that are there today that 2 years from now are not going to be there. So I just think that, like, this is all a positive sign. And what I really, really liked about it is that they seem to be communicating wordlessly better, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does. I mean, they're getting a better idea of where they are, where they're supposed to be on the ice. The group that I think has been the most apt at that, and has been for a little bit, and I think it's bleeding into the rest of the lineup, has been the bottom six, has been the third line and the fourth line. And the reason I bring them up is actually because of what we saw on the second line in the game against Colorado, and to a lesser extent, but certainly there, against Chicago. We all saw the lineup card. Michael Pezzetta listed as the left winger on that line. Michael Pezzetta was listed as the left winger on that line. He was not the left winger on that line. I think he had 2 shifts with them in the first period against Colorado. I think he had 2 more or 3 more in the second, and then 1 in the third period. And the rest of them were filled with Cole Caulfield because Marty was riding that hot hand in an effective way. It was the right thing to do. He put Heineman up there a little bit. Armia got some shifts there. Suzuki got some shifts there. Evans got some shifts there. Gallagher got some shifts. Like that. That was a revolving door for a reason.
It was an opportunity free for all.
Yeah, and because it was more important to Marty St. Louis to keep the bottom 6 intact. And this is my read of this. It was more important for Marty to keep that bottom 6 intact because he knows that's where this team's strength is right this very second. It's those guys going to work, getting the puck in deep, and working the puck down low. So to take one of those guys and move them off the bottom 6 and put them on the second line, and to insert Michael Pezzetta, who hasn't played in 28 games or whatever it was, that wouldn't have worked either. So, like, this was not an ideal scenario for the Montreal Canadiens. There's no reality where there's no reality where Michael Pezzetta is in this lineup where it's an ideal situation for the Montreal Canadiens. That's just the reality of it.
And he didn't do anything to deserve that. But what I thought was really funny, like, bringing up the Matt Lemieux for a second, is before the game when we found out that Patrick Laine wasn't playing, Ian and Scott joked that Pez was going to go on the second line, and then lo and behold, the lineup card comes out, and Pez is on the second line.
Yeah, I thought Scott was messing with me, honestly, and then it actually was happening. So
it was happening. No, he did joke about it at first, but then.
Yeah. Another lineup change that we saw within this one was the benching of Juraj Slafkovsky late in the third against Colorado. To me, it read more that Marty was coaching to win the game, and at that moment in time, Juraj Slafkovsky was not giving him what he needed. And I think Juraj Slafkovsky has struggled a little bit as of late, but he's the kind of guy that I think needs one game to get that confidence back.
Yeah, one conversation.
To get going.
Like,
yeah. Yeah, and I'm not worried about it. I think Marty was coaching to win that game, which was absolutely the right thing to do, because you owe it to the rest of the guys in that lineup to play the guys who are going. Jake Evans was going. That's why he was getting those shifts on that first line. The bench was shortened late in the third period. Jaden Struble didn't play. Emil Heineman didn't play. Juraj Slafkovsky didn't play. Michael Pezzetta barely touched the ice throughout the game, so it's almost irrelevant to mention him.
That was a late March coaching by Marty St. Louis in January.
Yes. and you know why I'm really excited about that? He has not gotten the opportunity to do that ever. He has not gotten that chance. And it reveals to me that when the time comes for them to need to string wins together and to use every ounce of whatever they have to get these points, Marty's going to pull the levers to make that happen. Like, that was really encouraging to me, because we don't know what Marty's going to be like when this team is winning hockey games regularly. We haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So it was really nice for me to see. Laura, I'll give you the last word on the Colorado game or anything else you want to say before we head into our weekly recap
I
and our
just want to
Vancouver
say
preview.
the Montreal Canadiens are in the mix.
So back. We have never been more back, and we will be more back just in a moment. When we do come back, we're going to talk about our weekly recap, break down the rest of that road trip, and give you a quick preview of the Vancouver game on Monday night, and we'll get into that in just a moment. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. With the playoff field locked, it's time to start thinking about who can win it all this year. Maybe you like the Chiefs to three-peat at plus 350, or my Commanders or Chargers to shock the world at plus 3,500. Hey, a guy can dream. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we are back. And we have to break down the rest of that road trip, the finishing touches of that road trip. On the week, Montreal played 3 games. They went 2-1-0, picking up 4 of 6 points. That 3-2 win on New Year's Eve against Vegas. The 4-2 loss to the Chicago Blackhawks, which I think we'll touch on a little bit in this segment. And the 2-1 shootout win over the Colorado Avalanche. The 6-game road trip ends with a 4-2-0 record. They picked up 8 of 12 points. They currently sit at 18-3, which is Gary Bettman 500. It means that they have picked up exactly half of the points that have been available to them. As of this recording, they are currently 1 point behind the second wildcard spot. We are waiting on the finish of the Pittsburgh and Carolina game, so you likely already know the scenario here. But if Pittsburgh wins in regulation, if Pittsburgh wins in any fashion, it's a 3-point deficit behind the wild card. Regulation loss is no change. Overtime loss is a 2-point deficit behind that wild card spot. I can't believe we're already kind of schedule watching, but like catch the fever. Like it's really cool to be able to do this and not have it be about tanking and like rooting for Arizona to pick up wins. This is kind of fun.
This is really funny too because it's January, right? Like, so this is around the time of the year when we start doing draft previews, and we're not doing that.
Yeah,
we will not do that until the Canadiens are officially out of the mix. But right now, the mix, they are in it.
Yeah, I think that's the right move. Let's quickly touch on the Chicago game because I think we kind of brushed over it because of how much fun the Colorado game was and how much more I'd rather talk about that. The Chicago game, I thought the 5-on-5 effort was really good, and I think they got beat on penalties and power plays, and they need to stop taking so many dang penalties. Like that's my takeaway from that one. And also, Soderblom for Chicago was incredible. He was so good.
Of course, and it was getting a little bit frustrating. But I think that the biggest thing about that was that like the Chicago Blackhawks are also a young team, and the whole time I kept watching them, I kept just thinking in general how much more together the Canadiens have it.
Yeah.
Just overall.
I look at the Chicago rebuild and they have Bedard, they have Nazar, they have Oliver. I think Oliver Moore, another really, really good player. I really don't know what the vision is there. Like I have a hard time seeing it. It can't just be we're gonna put dudes around Bedard and we're gonna try to win something because that hasn't worked for Edmonton either.
That doesn't work for anybody. Like, it cannot be a one-man team. I mean, like, people talk about Sidney Crosby changing Pittsburgh. Like, are we forgetting, like, Evgeny Malkin? Are we forgetting that, like, Marc-Andre Fleury was, like, a first overall pick goaltender? Are we forgetting Chris Letang? Like, it's just, you can't do it with one guy. You can't.
No, not at all.
Tried it with Carey Price. It didn't work.
Yeah, you certainly can't do it with just a goalie. You need to score goals, regardless of what Michel Therrien might tell you. My performance of the week goes to Cole Caulfield. Short and sweet. 3 goals, 3 games. He was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
My honorable mention is Kirby Dach. You can tell he's still figuring out the 5-on-5 shifts. He puts together some pretty brutal looking shifts from time to time, but he has a flair for the dramatic right now.
Yeah.
2 game-winning goals, both in the Vegas game and in the Florida game. I know the Florida game, he scored the first goal of the game. It was a shutout. Hey, that's a game-winning goal. They don't ask how, they ask how many. Yeah. And then the shootout winner against Colorado, which I didn't realize Kirby Dach is like automatic in the shootout in his
Yeah,
career.
he's really
Every
good.
goal he has scored has been the shootout clinching goal.
Yeah.
He doesn't score unclutched goals in the shootout. So keep leaning on him in the shootout. I like that. Well, who else stood out to you this week?
So I want to talk a little bit about Mike Matheson. For the same reason you were talking about Kirby Dach, like he had some shifts where it was like, but with Mike Matheson, like twice I saw the game start not looking good, and then he looked good. So
Yeah,
I think I think the Canadians are in our walls. They listen to what we say, and then they like try to prove us wrong.
I'm gonna put a counter up over my shoulder that is just like days since we talked about Mike Matheson, and just you're gonna watch me just turn around in the middle of the episode and reset it to 0 from 1 or 2 every single episode.
But this time I was saying good things.
Yeah, no, definitely. But like that player takes up an inordinate amount of the oxygen in the room, and for better or worse, right? Like he's either incredible or, I saw some people on the Canadian subreddit saying again, like just being, oh, just trade the bum. He's a bum, and it just like you guys aren't. Don't
That's
make me
not how
start
it
saying
works.
watch the dang games again. Watch the games. I don't know what to tell you.
This is not how any of this works.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing, like that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. That's exactly how I feel right now. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. But at the same time, like I think that also because we were talking about the last 2 games because we didn't do a recap, we cannot discount Jake Evans or Josh Anderson because like if
So
you
great.
take the whole body of work, like they were so good in that Vegas game that we do need to mention them for the weekly recap, I think.
Yeah. No, totally agreed there. All right, we do have to leave that behind just for now and quickly get into our Vancouver preview. We'll have a weekly forecast, I guess, after this. The Habs schedule has kind of made it difficult to stick with our bits, but we're doing our best to provide you guys with the information still. Vancouver game preview, Monday, 7:30, plan accordingly. Usually a 7 o'clock start at home, 7:30 due to Amazon Monday Night Hockey. Vancouver, 18, 12, and 8 for 44 points. 4th in the Pacific, 13th in the NHL. Since the Canada Division year, Montreal is 7-4-4 against Vancouver for 18 points out of a possible 30. Gallagher and Suzuki are tied for the most goals against the Vancouver Canucks with among active Montreal Canadiens with 6. Vancouver swept last year a 4-1 win in Montreal and a 5-2 win in Vancouver. Hughes is leading the way there, 42 points in 34 games, but he is hurt. He will not play, I can't imagine. I believe he's still week to week. Connor Garland, 29 points in 38 games. Pettersson, 28 points in 34 games. He's on the IR. He could be activated. He was put retroactively on the IR, so he could be activated by Monday. We will find out more about that, I imagine, after morning skates. And JT Miller, 25 points in 28 games. He missed about a month due to a personal leave back in November. So his numbers, given the time that he's played, like I said, 25 points in 28 games, nearly a point per game player. If he had played, that whole time, Vancouver's probably looking at a different situation, but he was obviously dealing with something at the time. Vancouver power play, 22.4%, 14th in the league. PK, 81.3%, 13th in the league. 5-on-5 goals for per 60, 10th in the league. Goals against per 60 at 5-on-5, 14th. Every stat I looked at for Vancouver, they were middle of the road in just about everything. Like this is a mid team if I've ever seen one. What are your thoughts on Vancouver coming into this one?
So I can't really tell what's going on over there right now. There seems to be a lot of disarray. I initially just thought it was, Hughes being injured. There seems like the vibes coming out of Vancouver are not immaculate, I have to say. And so I personally think that this is a winnable game. So obviously the Canadiens are going to lose it, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. No, I think this is a winnable game for the Montreal Canadiens. And I think that this is a team that, they went from bottom of the barrel to mid pretty quickly. Yeah. The challenge for them is to not stay mid, right? Whereas the Canadiens are still looking, they're still knocking on the door of mid right now. So yeah. I think it's a good team to kind of use as a benchmark is what I think. And the keys to the game were going to be, I'm assuming that Juraj Slafkovsky is going to have a long leash again in this game. I don't think he's going to be stapled to the bench. I just think that, like you said, Marty was strategizing in that game. But I also think that given that his mandate is to develop these guys, like I don't know what conversations happened when he signed here, but I think it's been pretty clear that his mandate is to develop guys. I think that, he gets a longer leash. At the time that we were recording this, we are expecting Patrick Laine to be back in the lineup, right?
I haven't heard anything, but I can't imagine if Flu keeps him out much longer. Again, we don't really know what he's dealing with. much to the chagrin of Michael Pezzetta, I would think that Line A is inching closer to a return.
Is good to go. Poor Pez. We might start having to like do, like the trade deadline values. Like we might have to start talking about Michael Pezzetta. Maybe he'll end up in a rumor roundup at one point.
He did already this year. New Jersey likes him.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
I was gonna say, like, the Devils probably still want him. Maybe
Yeah.
there's a move to be made there.
Yeah.
I'll say for the keys to this one, as always, I'll have it tattooed on my eyelids, protect the puck. They didn't do very well in that category against Colorado and Chicago. 15-4 against Chicago, and somehow 26-17 at Colorado. I think something's wrong with the way that they count their stats. There's no way they had almost 30 giveaways in that game and still beat the Colorado Avalanche. It doesn't make a ton of sense.
Or like kept it to how close it was before they went into overtime.
Yeah, exactly. And the other key, if you have a ticket to the game, you're the key. You need to welcome these guys back after the greatest road trip that we can remember. Like, it needs to be important to them that they come back to a loud building on Monday night. So you are the key. You hold the key.
If they don't do well, do not throw your Arbor Jackeye bobblehead onto the ice because I want it. If you're ready, if you're willing to part with it so easily, send it my way.
Yeah, you know how to contact us. Reach out. Laura will take it off your hands.
Yes.
I'm sure. All right, we need to move on. We have one more Vancouver Canucks centric topic, and it surrounds one Elias Pettersson, who has found himself once again in the I would almost said rumor roundup, but in the rumor mill. And we'll get into all that in just a minute. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for. And Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, Laura, we are headed into our final segment. Just as a quick reminder, we are pulling the raffle for our Carey Price signed photo this week. Laura, that'll come out on the Thursday episode, correct?
Yes, we're planning to do the actual raffle on the Wednesday episode. On the Wednesday recording, which comes out on Thursday. So really quickly, a couple of you did reach out because I made a couple of typos. If you entered the contest, which means if you fulfilled all the conditions by December 25th at 11:59 p.m. I entered you into a spreadsheet and I put the links into the show notes, which will go on every show note until Wednesday. And you have until Wednesday to let us know if we missed you and send us, I sent you the email on like December 4th or whatever it was, just to like give us a heads up. So far, people have reached out for typos, but other than that, your entries are all confirmed. So please check in the show notes for that link. We'll be putting it in there and just let us know if we missed you because we want to make sure we capture everybody who entered at the right time, fulfilled the right conditions before we do that draw on Wednesday night Eastern time.
Good stuff. Good luck. Good luck. I'm very excited to be giving this to somebody who will give it a better home than it's really just been kicking around my desk the last couple of weeks. So someone needs to take this away from me. Speaking of taking something away from somebody, Elias Pettersson, Elliot Friedman on the Saturday headlines. He's been all over the Canucks, somewhat demise or slow burn over the last few weeks. The Canucks are considering about all options that are in front of them when it comes to the apparent feud between JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. Those options include nobody gets traded. They work this out. Pettersson gets traded. Miller gets traded. Both of them get traded. Other people get traded. Like all options means to me, all options. Everything is available. Maybe not trading Quinn Hughes. That would seem stupid. But when you hear that a team like Vancouver is open for business in January, what does that sound like to you? Like, does it sound like a team that's trying to win now anymore. Like it doesn't to me.
It sounds like a team that's lost the plot, to be honest. If you had asked me, 2 months ago, if you'd asked me about Elias Pettersson, I would have said he's an untouchable. The fact
Yeah.
that all options are on the table, including him, and this is something you never want to hear about. Like I said, the vibes coming out of Vancouver are not immaculate right now. And the vibes coming out of Montreal are immaculate, right? This team is doing really well. Alex Carrier joined the team and was talking about how everyone plays for each other, blah, blah, blah. He made a huge show of that. And then, we talked about how they welcome Line, all of that kind of stuff. When you let that happen in a locker room, that is a front office and coaching responsibility as much as it is a player's responsibility, I find.
Yeah.
So, to me, trading a player is a lot easier. But for me, the question mark is, does Vancouver really want to part with this guy? And if they do, the price is going to be steep. You're not going to get away with fleecing the Canucks for Elias Pettersson. And also, I don't want JT Miller.
I would have no interest in Miller. It's all about Pettersson for me.
Yeah, he's not a fit, right? But Pettersson would instantly improve this team. And that's even factoring in the fact that you most likely will have to send Kirby Dach the other way.
Right. That's
right?
what he added in that segment, was that Vancouver would want a center in return. You look at them and you say you can have anybody that's not Nick Suzuki. And Michael Hage.
Yeah.
And probably just make that happen, I think.
Yeah.
I did some digging on this because it's something that I was interested in whether or not it's ever happened before. So Pettersson is 1 season removed from an 89-point season, and he's 2 seasons removed from 102 points in 1 season. That was a 39 goals, 63 assist season. The Montreal Canadiens have not traded for a player with at least one 100-point season under their belt before the trade since 1995. Pierre Turgeon was the last one that the Canadiens acquired in that way. I keep trying to talk myself out of it. I keep trying to find a reason that I don't want Elias Pettersson here. And I know people are going to do the character concerns. It's always been an issue with him.
Has it always been an issue though?
Vancouver's always been I've been hearing piece of a locker room. Like always. There's something going on in that city. Always. So right. I take all that with a grain of salt, that all of this is Pettersson's fault. I think that's just really good PR by JT Miller people. So if you have to send Dach the other way, I like Kirby Dach. I don't know if I've showed people this. A friend of mine, DF Pendry's listener of the show, gifted me this Kirby Dach signed baseball. I'm showing it on the YouTube feed. It's now my prized possession because it's one of the funniest things that I own.
Why is he signing a baseball?
Why is he signing a baseball? It didn't even make any sense. Anyway.
But since DF gave you that gift, Kirby Dach has been figuring it out.
He's been great. He's scoring. Things are good. So the baseball stays. The baseball's doing well. Would Vancouver be interested? And the other thing to think about here is his cap hit. Pettersson's cap hit, $11.6 million cap hit until 2032. So you're signing up for a long time with this player. The cost to acquire him is going to be high. Montreal's going to have to move salary out to make that happen, and they're not taking Josh Anderson or Brendan Gallagher to make that happen.
Right.
It's difficult to make that happen. But this is like a Jack Eichel type player being made available.
Yeah.
And I think if you're Kent Hughes, you move heaven and earth to make this happen if it's available. Here is my promise to everyone here. This is not a rumor roundup segment. This is not big hat time for those who are aware of what that means. We are in big hat watch right now, not big hat warning. There are conditions present for big hat to show up at some point. When we start getting some concrete links between Montreal and Vancouver, the big hat's coming out. Like that to me is just screams big hat. So I'm all in on this idea of trading for him, assuming core pieces other than Kirby Dach stick around. If you're talking about Caden Gooley going the other way, I can't get excited about that.
No.
So I hope it happens. I hope Montreal can make this happen. Although it's hockey, probably nothing's going to happen. They're probably all going to play out the season in Vancouver and just be miserable the entire time because that's what these teams do.
And then they have like an epic collapse at the end of the season where like they end up like at the bottom of the league. Poor Columbus. But one thing I do want to say about the character issues too is that like I said, it's a front office and coaching issue as much as it is a player's issue. If you're bringing in a guy like that, you tell him he gets with the program, right?
Yep.
You are hard on him as a coach, as a front office. You have those come to Jesus moments. You have those conversations, and you do not let him get away with poisoning the locker room, because it's like this is a group thing, right? And every team you see, you know, we talked about the Canadiens when they had that improbable Stanley Cup final run, right? The vibes were immaculate. Turns out, like afterwards, like not a whole lot of those players were all that great, but for those couple months, they came together, right?
Yeah.
And everyone was playing for each other. So like that's how it is in Montreal right now. If it's not like that in Vancouver, that's Vancouver's problem. But it's the second you come here, the problem you leave it behind you in Vancouver.
Yeah. And one last thing, everybody, you can stop typing your comments. I am not running Kirby Dach out of town. Laura is not running Kirby Dach out of town. It's just, it makes the most sense for what this trade would be. I want Kirby Dach to succeed in Montreal. However, if the price to acquire Elias Pettersson is like Kirby Dach and some other stuff,
it's going to be other stuff too. It's not only going to be Kirby Dach.
For sure. But like, that's the sort of structure of a deal that makes some sense. All right, let's move on to our trivia and then head out of here. Last episode's question was regarding a former Blackhawk and Montreal Canadian. Chicago, Columbus, Montreal, Tampa Bay, Ottawa. Laura, you know the answer to this one, correct?
I don't remember because I kept guessing Benoit Pouliot like 700 times. I was like, are you sure it's not Benoit Pouliot, even though you're the one that wrote the question? I can't remember. I remember it now. Was it Mike Blunden?
It was Mike Blunden. Shout out to Arbold2 on YouTube. They remembered it was Mike Blunden, the Blunden line in full effect. 127 games played, 7 goals, 6 assists, 145 penalty minutes. Incredible stuff there from Mike Blunden. All right. In the same spirit, here's a Montreal and Vancouver Canuck. This player went from Montreal to Anaheim, Vancouver, St. Louis, Pittsburgh. I think this one is a slam dunk. I think folks should know this one. Montreal, Anaheim, Vancouver, St. Louis, Pittsburgh. If you know the answer, put it in the comments. We will pin whoever gets it right and shout you out on the next episode. And speaking of the next episode, that's it for this one. Thanks so much for tuning in and for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, head over to Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey wherever you get podcasts. You can find the show Locked On Canadiens just about everywhere, all of the social platforms we are available on. You can email us, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. We'll get to your mailbag questions, usually on Fridays. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow.